much, everybody. And I just want to open by saying what a wonderful week this has been, and thank you all so much for your warm and loving and open and welcoming attitudes, the networking, and the fantastic programs that have gone on all week. It's been enlightening, illuminated. I came here with no expectations and found that this has just been a sterling experience. It goes down in history. So thank you. I'm grateful for all that you've given and hope that this gives you something as well. As Bob said, first we're going to look at the mind mirror patterns so you can understand what you're seeing as we look at the studies. And so we'll just start simply with this picture of, I call him Cyberman. Of course, you all know that brainwaves are the electrical activity of the mind, and that including both thought and emotion, which travel the same neural pathways. So the highest frequencies are up here at the top, speediest, then the slower, lower waves that are more spread out are the lower frequencies at the bottom. So a little bit of background. This is a picture of C. Maxwell Cade, who invented the mind mirror. There he is in this training room. He invented the mind mirror in 1976, and he was pure genius, just like Bob Monroe. Saw way far ahead, and everything that he discovered in his 3,000, turned out to be 4,000 sessions with people, has proved to be absolutely, perfectly correct. Even as we have this advanced data analysis now, everything he said. And I think that's because he was such a wide spectrum person. He was a biophysicist who made some real strides in radar that are lasting today, member of every Royal Society in England, but he was also a Zen master, a meditation master, a master hypnotist, and he was the secretary of the British Society for Psychical Research. So he was both a scientist and a mystic, and how can you go wrong when you have the full spectrum there, right? So I just wanted to point this out to say this is the old mind mirror, worked on light diodes, a very primitive instrument, and didn't even record more than 30 minutes inside of that console itself. This is Anna Wise here, who studied with Max for 8 years in England. And on this bottom of the slide, it says something that will really resonate with you here at TMI. From our studies of the brainwave patterns of some 3,000 pupils, as well as swamis, yogis, Zen masters, healers, mediums, and clairvoyants, it has become possible to establish that all of the unusual abilities that some people are able to manifest, including self-control of pain and healing, healing of others, telepathy, etc., are associated with changes in the EEG pattern toward a more bilateral, symmetrical, and integrated form. So he's saying that you have to have hemisync to be able to get anywhere in consciousness. And this makes perfect sense, because if you look at brain-injured patients and people who are under a lot of stress, they don't have that symmetry. So a lot of what we do with the mind mirrors help people become more symmetrical and thus more coherent. This is Anna Wise, who after her 8 years with Max brought a mind mirror back to Boulder, Colorado. She was a humanistic psychologist, and she added a whole new dimension. Well, I can't say new, because Max was a hypnotist, and hypnotists know how to work with the deepest levels of the mind for healing. But nevertheless, Anna brought the whole Gestalt component to the mind mirror, and the idea of working with a part that had separated out from the whole of one's being, which is another way of saying an issue, and healing that issue and the various steps that were involved in that. And she also created a training program. I studied with her, and then subsequently for 4 years assisted her at the Esalen Institute before she passed away in 2010. So this quote here says, "Put as simply as possible, this distinct and visible mind mirror pattern is produced by adding more relaxed, imaginative alpha waves to the beta of ordinary thinking, and by also awakening the slower theta waves associated with deep meditation, creativity, and access to the subconscious, as well as the delta radar of intuition and empathy." So she goes on to say that the awakened mind pattern describes a symphony of brainwaves, with each frequency playing its own characteristic part. The score of this symphony can be seen as a template against which an individual's brainwave pattern can be measured and assessed, and thus adjusted, because once you see your brainwave pattern, and you have, most importantly, an internal landmark for what frequencies and what categories and hopefully what orchestration you're producing, then you can reproduce it. Because the brain doesn't know the difference, as someone said the other day, the brain doesn't know the difference between a real and an imagined event. So if you have an internal landmark, say you feel extremely vast and spacious and spread out, expanded, maybe there's a fluttering in your heart, and we ask you to landmark that pattern, find a word, image, concept, or body sensation that represents your felt state of awareness. And maybe that's, you describe that as being a red cardinal who lands on a bush and there's a white light all around it and has wings of gold. Well, the next time you bring to mind that visual and felt pattern, then your brain goes back to probably, with that description, what was a gamma brainwave experience. And the brain recreates it, and thus you can condition the brain to whatever state of awareness is your optimal state. Now so Anna wrote 2 books. Max Cade's book, The Awakened Mind, it's back there, Biofeedback and the Development of Higher States of Awareness. That book has actually become a foundation for neurofeedback, because with 4,000 studies, even though we have different electrode positions from neurofeedback people, still our categories and mostly our frequencies are the same as theirs. And what Max found was valid in terms of what category represented what, and we're going to look at that. And Anna subsequently wrote 2 books in the U.S., The High Performance Mind, Mastering Brainwaves for Insight, Healing, and Creativity, that also became a milestone, a landmark for the study of consciousness. And that is partly because in the U.S., EEG, after Joe Camilla in 1957, went the direction of pathology, whereas the only other people working with consciousness were Elmer and Alice Green, and then Max Cade over in England, and then Anna Wise. And still neurofeedback is beginning to explore consciousness and meditation and what those brainwaves are, but they're still at the very beginning, and that's why we're kind of the hallmark and the standard and the understanding of changes in consciousness. I visited Max's wife Isabel in England a couple of years ago, and she said that Max passed away in the 1990s, and his only regret was that people had not come to understand that if you change your brainwaves, you change your state of consciousness. And that was as late as the 1990s. Now today, I go to these trans-tech conferences, and there's 500 people in the audience, and they're all from Silicon Valley, and they're all inventing something based on that understanding. So we've come an incredibly long way in a very short period of time, since their books and since their studies. So after Anna passed away, I had the honor and privilege of collaborating with her former husband and son to gather the disparate emails and information and her training records, and put that all together in this website called the Institute for the Awakened Mind. And so you can go onto this page and learn more about both Max and Anna, and not just them, about what we're going to discuss this morning, and that is the meditative descent into higher awareness. Hopefully you all have a sheet of paper that's a table of subjective landmarks. And in the left column, there's a series of numbers, 0 to 6, and these are the brainwave states that match those numbers. So there's ordinary consciousness, a person who has nothing but this beta conscious mind and the delta radar on. But then in category 0, the brainwave pattern looks like that. category 1, 2, and so on. Now we're going to discuss all of this so you'll be able to make those internal connections. But if you just want to explore more about the patterns, more about the theory, there's a lot of stuff up on the website, as well as some free downloadable guided meditations. This is a picture of the Mind Mirror 6 display. And you can see in the moving brainwaves that it's really kind of a dance of light. This is a hologram of consciousness where the activities of mind, which are, after all, impulses of light, are moving the brainwave display. It's a fascinating thing to watch, which is why we all love, as researchers, to do just that. But it became a lot more fascinating when we developed this Mind Mirror 6 and moved from that light diode, no data, to be able to look at just a mind mirror summary patterns that are an average of each brainwave band, to be able to segment that and look at different parts of the session. Here somebody's doing a body scan, here connecting with a friend. We have so many options here. We can title things, and we have these amplitude windows, all of which we employ for the study for TMI. And today, as a result of our studies here, these last 2 studies, one in June, one in December, we've actually started modifying our mind mirror summary to be able to compute statistical data all the way up to 100 hertz. We had a brand new 100 hertz sensor and had had it only for a couple of months when we first came here. And we didn't even know if anybody was going to be producing brainwaves up above 64 hertz, which is what we'd been looking at to begin with. And by George, by cracky, here's an awakened mind pattern at 100 hertz that's moving toward a gamma synchrony pattern, very much a higher state of consciousness. So everything still starts with an understanding of, to be able to look at the data, I'll show you in the second PowerPoint show, an understanding of these categories, and maybe you'll even get a feeling for them, because you're certainly in beta right now. You are producing brain waves at a speed that's fast enough to catch everything I say, and now it's speeding up, and then if I really slow it down, your processor in beta is going to slow down. Because beta is your active mind of external awareness. It's your conscious mind, your reason, your logic, all of your thought processes. Here we see the random thinking amplitude of beta. So here we're looking at frequency, here we're looking at amplitude, the width of the pattern. Amplitude being the power of the signal. So the power of this signal right here is that this person is just doing some random thinking. They're just processing at a regular speed. But if that beta speeds up to do some list making and decision making, then that beta is going to increase its width, its amplitude. And if you are answering your cell phone and your house phone is on hold and there's a fax, I don't know if anybody receives fax anymore, but if they did, a fax is coming in, the children are standing at the top of the stairs saying, when am I going to get dinner? And you have too many windows open at the same time, then you might well move into stress, anxiety, and panic beta, which will be very high amplitude beta. That doesn't feel good, does it? Does anybody here have an experience of high beta in their whole life? All right, everyone does, everyone does. And what we usually do is look for a solution because it's intolerable. It's setting off the fight, flight, or freeze response. And nobody can live in high beta. This is very, very detrimental to one's health. And this poor guy, you know, he's just doing numbers. But for other people, it's the ego's monkey mind. It's just this constant chatter. Although the reptilian brain can be the one that's simulating, scanning for threats on a deep level, the monkey mind is just bouncing around in broken points of consciousness. So this is not a place we really want to spend much time. We would much rather be here in this lovely alpha, wouldn't we? And in the beauty of this surrounding, you no doubt have had your alpha stimulated. Alpha in the lower and slower frequencies than beta, and thus will reduce beta, the amplitudes of beta. If you walk out into nature, they are operating between 14 and 8 hertz, which is actually the frequency range, the overriding frequencies of nature. And in the brain, that is a relaxed and detached, diffused, daydreaming sensory awareness. If you have had a really hard day and all you can do is wait to get home to have a nice glass of wine or to go to the corner bar and get a martini, that's what you're doing. You're stimulating alpha. And in fact, alcoholics have no alpha. They are getting the alpha to bring down that beta, to bring down that stress, and don't know any other way to do it. Now, the wonderful thing about alpha, and I know you've had this experience yourself, you're walking along in the woods and you're not thinking about too much of anything, and suddenly you realize that this hill you're climbing is like life itself. You're stumbling over rocks, you're finding the best pathways up, and that's because when you extend this alpha bridge and reduce that beta, there's every likelihood that you're going to move down into your theta brainwaves of your subconscious mind. We touch the subconscious every time we think back in time over our lives, because the subconscious is long-term memory. It is also the repository of all our difficulties. All our unresolved issues are here in theta. And so this is where self-healing takes place. It's also where our creativity is, because this is the seat of, dare I say it, the soul. You could call it your essential being, your deeper core self, that wellspring of wisdom and information out of which your creative insights come when you come here to TMI and you enjoy these meditations. You're dipping down into theta, the information is coming up, and a lot of the time it's giving you ways to resolve issues. Those very issues, they're side by side. Isn't this beautiful that you have this spectrum inside yourself? Oh, these are my issues. My cat got run over, and then my dog died, and nobody loves me. And then the part that said, you are more than your physical body, right? This is also the realm of REM sleep. So that is how come once you move into your alpha bridge, there's every likelihood that you can fall asleep. We are going to do a meditation at the end of this presentation and before the PowerPoint, which is the report on our studies. You will not fall asleep for that, because this is going to be an alpha, high alpha meditation. Hopefully you will move down into your theta for information, but it won't be the kind of deep, profound, low amplitude alpha meditation where you could click out or could fall asleep into trance. And so that is the difficulty with theta, is that whenever we are in our theta, we want to have some alpha present also that will keep us closer to the conscious border in beta, so that we can stay awake and get that information that resides here and in our field and in the bigger field, the information being a flow. Who knows where it comes from, but we know that because this is the realm of memory, that it is passing, at least passing through theta on its way up to conscious awareness. And that information can also come from delta, the personal unconscious. These waves in delta are so low and slow. They're the waves of deep restorative sleep. Hello, click out, right? You can go into REM, get some quick insights, some visions, and then click right on out into delta sleep. When you come up, you feel really good, and I'll show you some click-out pattern in a moment. But the important thing about delta is that it's the place where we connect with the field. You can call it a quantum sea of vibrating light. It is that field of information. And the mind is so quiet, this level of the mind is so quiet that it's not impeding or resisting the flow of information and energy in that field. So it's really coming up through delta. It can come in through sensory alpha. It's a super high amplitude. It can come in through the highest frequencies of beta, which run into gamma. It can come through your soul self. It can come from any direction, but mostly we see it people reaching out from information from the field with their delta and receiving that information with a change in the shape of delta. So it's our connection to the collective unconscious, but it's also our connection to this world, because delta is as that form of radar that we've had since the beginning. This would be our reptilian mind. It's our sensing device. It's sensing what's behind us, what's all around us, well below the level of conscious awareness. And its sensing happens way before the logical mind realizes that there's a danger or there's something that needs to be taken care of. And it literally is like radar. I always think it's kind of funny that Max Cade was in radar, and this whole thing turns out to be so much about our radar. You'll see very high amplitude delta in people who have who are healers, delta that can go out to here in 50, 60, 100 hertz, Tai Chi people, because they're transmitting energy. But you can also see the same high amplitudes of delta in people who have had difficulties in their childhoods, who have been subjected to turmoil, chaos, even abuse, and they develop hypervigilance, and that delta spreads out to be able to do very wide field sensing as a means of protection. That's hypervigilant protection. So there's a gift even in that. And interestingly, in most psychics, they'll tell you that they had very difficult childhoods, so their delta turned on and boom, they were psychic. So delta played a huge part in the RV-OBE studies, and hope to share a little bit of that with you. So then if we, as Anna said, orchestrate this and put all four of those categories together, what we're looking at in meditation is flat beta, because we don't want to see beta. We want to have a quiet mind. But we do want to see a combination of alpha and theta. Alpha gives us the relaxed, diffused, daydreaming awareness, and theta gives us access to the content of the subconscious mind so that we can work with it, and also our connection with our essential being. Delta doesn't really technically have to be present for the meditation pattern. It can just be an alpha or theta. But when you get that insight, say you're meditating, something moves down here in your theta, then where you're going to receive that is in a low frequency, low amplitude beta, just for that split second that insight moves up. Now this pattern of the awakened mind is also the pattern of spiritual masters, long-term meditators, highly developed and spiritually conscious people. This is the pattern that Max Cade found in those 4,000 studies, and is really the basis of our work. What it basically is an open flow of awareness from the highest to the lowest frequencies and then back up, so that the mind is connected and united, so that all four of these categories are firing simultaneously, and you have access to quiet intellectual clarity, your sensory awareness, and your creativity and insight, and healing, and your deeper being, and also your psychic connection with the field simultaneously. And this is who we are as a full human, right? To have access to all of our qualities, all of our different ways of knowing. You could say that this is the intellect, this is the intuition, and this is the instinct, which indeed, if you put those together, are all of our ways of connecting with the field, processing energy and information, and expressing it here in this earth. So then at the bottom this says, spiritual masters, long-term meditators, and people with a high-performance mind emit light and the frequencies composing this brainwave biofeedback pattern, characterized by an open flow of clarity, creativity, insight, spiritual connection, and psychic awareness. And this is not quite the dominant pattern that we saw in the studies we've done here, but if without that awakened mind pattern, people aren't getting anything. They're not getting insight, so it's our baseline pattern. If the mind is disorganized, you're not going to hit the target, you're not going to have the OBE. It's got to be at least this pattern. We have also seen people hit the target in the last study and have extraordinary experiences of happiness in the first study in this pattern, which is actually, if you look at this, this is an amplification. If you amplify the frequencies here in each one of these categories, then this is what you end up with. This is, I would bet that all of you have experienced this evolved mind pattern at some point. This is a spontaneous illumination, a sense maybe in a SAM meditation that, this is home. Pure mind, pure spirit, a connection with who you really are, and you know that who you really are is something extraordinary. It feels like bliss and joy, and what it really is the unification of all 4 of these brainwave categories with some gamma up at top. And our highest frequencies, we are measuring low gamma. This is only going up to 44 hertz, our original patterns, but there was still a little bit of gamma. We didn't realize we were measuring, but actually were from the start. I think that it's really interesting how these patterns are like sacred geometry. I call them holograms, but they're also like sacred geometry. That awakened mind is a man-woman pattern with outstretched arms, isn't it? And then here, the circle of oneness that's known from culture to culture, civilization to civilization, as a circle, the beginning and the end, the alpha and the omega. And in fact, this is a pattern that you'll see when people are resonating with this quantum field of light, and can feel it, can feel that happening. Now, I said that this circle involves some higher frequencies right here at the top of the awakened mind, the top of the evolved mind, that are actually low gamma. When we added to the mind mirror, which was actually right away because I was fascinated by gamma to start with the mind mirror 6 added 2 bands of gamma, then suddenly I began to see people who had this untrained gamma up in these frequencies ranging from 44 to 64 hertz. It turned out that they were all psychics and healers who were having trouble with electrical noise in the atmosphere, and in fact that's what's coming out of the plug is right there in their bandwidth. And they were having to wear Q-links and put devices on their computers. And what, after quite a few of these experiences with them I realized was that they were having untrained gamma. And if you connected them with their theta and grounded them, then that gamma would move into this pattern here and integrate with the rest of the brainwave pattern, and suddenly they weren't doing this, which is quite uncomfortable. And even though they were then integrated in this more trained gamma, which I call the gamma synchrony pattern, which we'll be looking at a lot here, they were still superconscious. They were still connected to the field, but grounded into the earth at the exact same time. So this I call the superconscious mind, because this person who is plugged into this gamma is having superconscious experiences. They're super lucid, super intuitive. They have got spontaneous flow of insight all the time. They feel luminous. You know these people. You see them. They're the ones who are just switched on. They're vibrant. You know, the awakened mind is the same way, but the gamma, that person's talking because there's stuff coming in all the time. You'll find them to be more talkative people, more creative people. And that's because things are going on in their brains that are very important to all of us, and this is why we really want to help people move from the awakened mind to the evolved mind on into the gamma synchrony patterns, and the SAM is doing it. And what's happening in their brains is that the high voltage electricity is forming new brain cells in the frontal lobes and increasing one's intellectual capacity, and also forming new brain cells in the hippocampus, which is increasing memory storage and retrieval. And if you put those things together, intellect and memory, what you've got is higher level of creativity. The brain with gamma is balancing across the lobes and across frequencies, and this person is switched on. And so neuroscientists, since 2005, when I started looking at their studies, have discovered that when people are in this producing gamma, they don't call it a gamma synchrony pattern, that's unique to the mind mirror, but when they are producing high amplitudes of gamma, they're feeling love and compassion, non-attachment, non-duality, a lot of the same things as the evolved mind, because again, the evolved mind pattern has some low gamma in it, but higher gamma is associated with out-of-body travel. I even read a study last night that said that people who are talking about their experiences with UFOs, they're producing gamma too. So it's really a kind of higher dimensional thing, and the intuitional abilities of these people makes this something that really we would want to move toward as a humanity, as one humanity. They're looking from higher perspectives, more transcendent perspectives, and I think we're seeing crops of these kids being born into this planet. They're just functioning at a higher level altogether. Now, this is the brainwaves of what I named universal consciousness, which also has a lot of gamma. And I didn't know what this pattern was going to look like. I thought it was going to be an evolved mind circle down here with another evolved mind circle up at the top, and that was going to be a harmonic, because my concept was that energy and information that's flowing down into the human field and then into the human brain and awareness is happening through harmonic resonance. And there's tons of things we could say about that, and we won't, but it made sense. But when we got the 100 hertz sensor, we certainly, you saw that awakened mind pattern up to 100 hertz earlier, but I had never seen the universal consciousness pattern. And I kept saying, what's the thing going to look like? What's it going to look like? Well, I found out. One day I was doing some equipment testing, and I'd been working till 4 o'clock the morning before, and I said, here's a good chance to hook up, because I'm going to click out, and I want to see what the click out looks like, and that's the click out. You know, there's been a lot of question, I don't know if it's been among you, but it's been within me about this click out, because I would go into meditation and just disappear right in the middle of some kind of affirmation. And I do this meditative writing, and the meditative writing said, you are in complete resonance with the field, and that's why you're coming back so healed. And I'd go, I don't believe that. I want to stay awake so that I can have all the wonderful effects of the vibrating purple eye, and you know, I just wanted all the wonder stuff. I wanted to feel the inflow of energy, and so I would complain about this in my meditative writings and say, and it would come back and say in a different way, No, this is when there's no impedance between you and the field. I go, well, I don't believe that. And so I hook myself up, and that's exactly what it is. And there's the universal consciousness pattern. It is an evolved mind pattern. And I had a manual trigger button, so I would click out, and then I would come back, and I would click immediately, and then I would disappear again and click again, and I went back and studied this thing frame by frame every time I clicked out. So when you're clicking out in SAM, you are receiving all the energy and information in the field in an unimpeded way, and the click out turns out to be a good thing. Now, it's not a great thing if you want to have your insight come right then or come right after. And we did run into this with the studies where a lot of people were frustrated by not having the insights. But now I can comfort them and say, not a problem, not a problem at all, because where you're going is where everything in this life that happens to us, that we clear, that we evolve beyond, that evolution is going to here, into complete connection with this field, where we feel nothing but love and unity and the truth of who we are, which is not only more than our physical bodies, but more than our souls. A place of incredible love that governs everything, whether we see it or not. And so I hope for you it will govern this meditation. We're going to do a fun little meditation that won't last but about 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes. And the purpose is just to give you an experience of the meditation that we did at the end of our opening and closing baselines for both of these studies. And so the meditation is just asking you to close your eyes and relax and allow imagery to come to you without trying to do anything. Okay? And so getting comfortable in your chair, begin to sensualize yourself as some kind of animal. It could be a real animal or a fantasy animal. If you have trouble identifying what you are, look down at your feet. What kind of feet or hooves or claws do you have? What is your skin covering? How big are you? What is your shape? How do you move? What do you eat? Where do you live? What kind of sound do you make? How do you communicate? Do you live alone? With a mate? with a group. What makes you happy? What makes you sad? What makes you feel afraid? What makes you feel strong and powerful? What gives you courage? Live the experience of being this animal for a few moments on your own. Use as many senses as possible to bring this experience to life. Soon you are going to slowly turn back to your human form. But before you do, take a few moments to become aware of your qualities and characteristics as this animal. Find a few representative words for your nature. Those qualities and characteristics that you would like to bring back with you into your human form. Imagine yourself in your human form, embodying those qualities and characteristics. What would your life look like if those qualities and characteristics were manifest? And now, send those qualities and characteristics up to your thinking mind so you can remember them later on. And when you're ready, gently come back to this outside space. So how many people experienced being an animal? Wonderful. And this is because the brain loves mind play. The ego doesn't know to get in the way of this. Oh, we're going to be an animal, how fun. So it doesn't say, wait, what animal am I? And it allows all of the sensory questions, how big are you, what sound do you make, your alpha, to respond and give you those answers. But then when the questions become what makes you happy, what makes you sad, find your qualities and characteristics, well, you have to go into your human self, because you're not an animal after all, except in the larger sense, and get those answers. And so that was an alpha theta state, an alpha theta meditation. Normally we would process this, so I would just encourage you to write this down as quickly as you can. We don't have time to do that right now. And to know that the ultimate purpose of this is to give you a landmark for your essential being. So you can take, if your qualities and characteristics were, I am graceful, strong, and powerful, then you can put that in an I am sentence. I am, and repeat that. Edgar Cayce called that an ideal, and said that if you built that through repetition, through affirmation, into your being, that it would reorganize your very atoms and cells. So if these were beautiful things you'd like to know about yourself, then repeat them. And you could even use a landmark of your animal. Maybe it was very powerful while you were running, or maybe your hearing was really good. Whatever it was, your subconscious has given you a form, a structure that you can reaccess and learn from and gain from. Sound like a plan? All right. So now let's go on with part 2. This is our Mind Mirror Report, Journey to Happiness for the Discovery Program, which was in June. Here's the hookup process. On the left is Laura Eichmann and hooking up Felice, and here on the right is Robin Bernard. Are you here, Robin? There you are. Will you stand up, Robin, and just say hello? She's like a kid in a sandbox with this research, boy. We appreciate her so much. And Robin's hooking up Nancy. And then here is how we had the room set up. You see Laura here, Robin's over here with 4 people. Each monitor has 4 people. There's Ross with 2 people. And then here I was sitting here with 4 people as well. And here you can see a little bit of synchronization in people's patterns, person 1 and person 2, monitoring 4 people simultaneously. And then the session starts. The lights go out, we shine a light, and we are drawing. You can't see it very well here, but Laura's got a piece of paper, Robin's looking down, drawing the patterns as well. By the time we get to that point, we already know something about the people from a questionnaire, an opening questionnaire. Do you have a regular meditation practice? If so, what methods do you use? For how many months or years have you been practicing? How often do you practice, and for how long at a time? We want to see if their beta collapses instantaneously. That's probably because they've got a meditation practice. But if it doesn't collapse and they've got a meditation practice, and we want to know why, we're going to ask them questions about, well, what's going on with, were you comfortable in your chair? So these pre-questions really help us out a lot. And then we, along the same lines, want to know what is the extent of your experience with the Monroe Institute, whether on-site, off-site, or in listening to guided meditations at home. Do you practice any other spiritual and/or healing modalities? If so, which one or ones? And then what do you focus on, if anything, during your meditation or spiritual practice? How busy or quiet is your mind? What feelings or sensations do you typically experience? Please describe them. What drew you to meditation or spiritual practice, and how long ago? Please describe. Some people gave short answers, some people gave long answers that were really helpful. So these are just pictures of, Becky Carroll gave her permission to use her name here, so some of you may know Becky. She's a psychologist living in Maryland, and so I drew her patterns during the animal centralization, and I saw asymmetry in her left and right brain, but then she settled down a little bit, but then the asymmetry came back, and sure enough, she reported at the end of the meditation, lying back, I wasn't comfortable on the bar of the anti-gravity chair, but I was a large-headed lizard with scales, but it was a mental construct only. Well, now you know the difference. What is a mental construct? Everything's a mental construct. Where does it come from? Did it come from your theta, or were you just figuring out in your beta? Well, once she knew that, she realized that this pattern here, the awakened mind pattern, by the time we got down to the question of what gives you courage, and that is a full-blown awakened mind pattern with some movement of into her theta. Well, she said, okay, well, maybe it wasn't a mental construct. So, see, looking at the patterns gives you maybe a modification of what you were thinking, or that can work vice versa. We get to vibe flow, totally better patterns, more like this. She starts out and we see some gamma, she fades away here, she flatlined here, maybe went out of body. She was comfortable here, she reported. She's got an evolved mind flare, the circle here. This is a full-blown gamma synchrony pattern all the way up to 100 hertz. So at this point my eyes were bugging out and I could hardly wait to see the data on her. But before I show you that, I want to show you just how we were computing the data. So we're looking at basically three patterns. The awakened mind pattern going up to 44 hertz, the evolved mind pattern going up to 44 hertz, the gamma synchrony pattern going up to 64 hertz. So the mind mirror summary that we pull on every person, whether it's for the whole session or whether it's in segments of the session, consists of three things. First, this averaged pattern for every single one of the frequency bars, and then the training summary. This is used by self-trainers. The scale is from 1 to 10, and just quickly, this has to do with the compliance to the ratios of the pattern. These are 1 part beta to 2 parts alpha to 1.6 parts theta to 1 part. And so that is the basis for these calculations. What we find is that advanced meditators, psychics, healers, even dowsers, people who are highly developed and spiritually conscious are gaining statistical rewards on training level 5 that for the awakened mind are between 75 and 98%. So we have a measuring, a yardstick that we can use and say, wow, this was really something. So this person, 83% for the awakened mind, that's very high. 38% for the evolved mind, that's also very high. 66% for gamma synchrony, mwah! We want to love that pattern. That pattern is high as a kite, and in fact, these are Becky's. And so the other part is the mind mirror summary plot. These dots at training level 3 mean that she was in compliance with 70% of the gamma synchrony pattern, which is an extraordinary thing. Very few people get rewards below 4, and most people don't get rewards at training level 4 at all. But these dots, we can click on the dot and find out exactly when that happened and make that correlation between the pattern, the highly refined pattern, and their experience and say, well, what happened here? So now let's look at some of the things that we have to look at, because we have to make sure that we're not looking at artifact. The first thing we're going to look at is signal quality. So we pull this window, the summary window. It's the time series window with time at the bottom. We want to make sure it's at a 1, and that means that's an unbroken signal. They did not move their heads, and the electrodes did not lose contact with the head. We're also going to look at SEMG artifact. Now this is the boogaboo of all researchers, because gamma can masquerade as SEMG artifact, and SEMG artifact can masquerade as gamma because they're happening in some of the same frequencies. For us, gamma, can we hold that question to the end?
I just want to know what SEMG is.
It's surface electromyography. So it's movement or tension in the head, neck, and shoulders. Okay, so that can displace the electrodes if it's a really gross movement. So above 5 microvolts, we find that the pattern is disturbed. That's what that green line shows us right here. Now we have a rise here. This is Becky's animal, so that's her eyes open segment, that's her eyes closed, and this is the animal meditation. You see the rise in SEMG, and in her mid-gamma of 44 to 64 hertz, there's also a rise, an increase in the amplitude. So now we're saying, well, wait a minute, was her discomfort that she reported the reason for this gamma, and is it not real gamma at all? So because of this, and because other people in the first study were uncomfortable, which, believe me, we worked really hard to remedy the second time around, put them in neck pillows, got out towels, some people were on air beds, because this really creates all kinds of problems in the data. What we ultimately found with Becky was that she has the ability, despite extreme discomfort, to stay in her meditation state. She actually got the information about the large-headed, large-scale lizard there. She has the ability to maintain her pattern. And you can see that these are not so different. This is where her discomfort started. This is where her eyes closed was. So parsing out the data is our real challenge. And as we look at these, you'll see, now I took the people's names out, but you can see right away, this is Becky with that mega gamma right there. This is the difference. These are 4 people hooked up to my device. And look at the differences. This person is doing some narrating here at 15 hertz. So this low beta is amplified. This person has got a little bit less theta, but she's also got a nicely integrated low gamma here with the whole rest of the pattern, and she was getting lovely insights. And this person here has got a low alpha peak at 9 hertz, and because he's got this huge theta and this huge delta, the tendency to fall asleep, which is something he struggled with throughout the whole week. So Becky was activating sensations and sounds during vibe flow. This person brought earth into her belly, so she was narrating it, but look, beautiful, beautiful pattern here. This person, also a beautiful pattern, and her experience was she was breathing into the kundalini, and it was shaking, and she was in a state of peaceful bliss. So this shaking is going to affect her theta, but all in all, it's a lovely pattern. She's gamma synchrony 54%, which is extremely high. And this person here had a low awakened mind score, only 5% compared to 75 for highly developed people because of this delta, and also a little bit more beta than would be allowed in the pattern. So you can see that everybody's producing completely different patterns, except every now and then they do synchronize. So what we did was run the summary windows, the amplitude windows, the SEMG, the signal quality, and the amplitude windows. And from those created this individual report for every single person. They were 13 to 19 pages long. You can see that the graphs take up a lot of space, but there's a ton of thinking and figuring that goes into here based on their subjective report, our comments, and then as more sessions come into play, our comments are better informed and we learn and understand much more. And so by the end, we have both an abstract, which is really another word for conclusion, and recommendations that we make to the people and send them these reports. The individual report is then the basis for a compilation of abstracts, which tracks their statistical changes in each gamma synchrony, evolved mind, and awakened mind from open to closing, and then their scores for all the gamma synchrony SAM meditations. Every single one. And look, Becky's are phenomenally high. And it tracks her experience, and so there's one of these segments which can be 4 paragraphs, 6 paragraphs for each person, and this compilation of abstracts was a whopping 17 pages. So then, with the help of my grandson, I created this Excel sheet, and it tracks the opening and eyes open, eyes closed, animal meditation, then all the SAM meditations, and then the closing eyes open, eyes closed, and animal. And 1 asterisk means that the person had an experience. 2 asterisks mean that they had a profound experience, and look at all the 2s. Here's the correlation with Jim Lane's mystical experience. You saw that so many people had high scores. Well, these are the brainwaves and their directly reported experience. We had never seen gamma synchrony scores in the 70s, much less the 80s, much less the 90s that Becky produced, and she was not the only person. Here's a 48, 47, 49, that's very high. 54 is very high, 52, but you see they vary because people's state of consciousness changes. Maybe they get uncomfortable in their seat. Tremendous variation in these things. So the compilation of abstracts, the individual reports, that gamma Excel, all of that synthesized it into the executive summary, which I'm sure TMI was happy to see was only 7 pages long. So our conclusions were that all 14 participants produced advanced brainwave patterns during the opening baseline in 1 or more segments. Eyes open, eyes closed, and the animal. This was a particularly advanced group of people. And in fact, Bob Holbrook had invited many of these people to participate. They'd been to TMI before. Some were TMI trainers. Second conclusion, everyone responded to the hemisync SAM beats and music, mostly SAM, 90% SAM, so gamma, by producing sustained surges of low, mid, and or upper gamma, and some people all the way up to 100 hertz. We could totally see these people on those gamma amplitudes start low gamma, woo, up it goes again, and then at the end it goes down. So direct effects, visible effects. Then, as a direct result of the hemisync SAM training, the closing baseline showed that everyone had increased their statistical scores from the opening to the closing in all 3 segments, eyes open, eyes closed, animal meditation, in at least one of the patterns. So maybe they had a low gamma pattern, they were operating more in the lower frequencies, and so then in that case they were going to have a higher awakened mind or evolved mind pattern, but scores. But the main thing here is that they were able to progress, showed a direct progression in their patterns. And of course, what's really important to most people is that their subjective feedback in the closing self-assessment matched their brainwave advances. Everyone reported an expansion in consciousness and feeling happier. You know, it was just clear correlations between the statistical scores, the brainwave patterns, what they reported, and that's the thing we love about the mind mirror. I mean, it is a mirror. It does not lie. If we see a pattern, they said, that was not my pattern, that was not my experience, then we're going to start talking to them and try to find out why that is so. But ultimately, it was so. So I prepared 14 slides. So the Dropbox link will get you through the rest of the slides, but just to show you a few of them, here is the difference between Becky's opening animal meditation and closing animal meditation. Look at the gamma the SAM beats gave her here. phenomenal amount of change in the pattern. In fact, she went from gamma synchrony 65% at training level 5 and 23%, very unusual, at training level 4, to 87, from 65 to 87, from 23 to 63. Wow. And her report was, now I have more evidence-based trust in what I thought and hoped was true. That is, that gamma is abundantly and readily available to me, that my practice is strengthening my mindfulness skills, that I do produce these states regularly and without real efforts. Hooray! My delight is that my best score of the week was the ending baseline with no SAM, because that is the norm of life, and that it occurred while I was feeling deep love and appreciation for my beings, one human, two cats. I'm inspired to do more straight meditation to continue to strengthen my brainwave pattern. So Becky is a psychologist and outreach trainer for TMI. She's attended TMI programs since 2005, listens to HemiSync and SAM. So the power for her not only was the increase in her gamma that she had gained through the week, but also that she found out it was lasting. And even without the SAM, she felt much more expanded and much happier. So we'll get through as many of these as we can. So this is the gentleman I showed you in the 4 pictures where he had all this theta and delta. So he is a retired maintenance planner. He does HemiSync 3 times a week. He's done 20 programs at TMI. He says in the closing self-assessment, I had never really felt SAM frequencies before. This time, I moved into the meditative states and it was easier to slip into altered, relaxed states. By the end of the week, I felt relaxed and stress-free. Now, the gamma, the SAM, is responsible for the relaxed and self-free and stress-free, but feeding back the patterns to him and showing that he had this descending 9 hertz alpha that was dragging him into non-conscious sleep when he wanted the insights, that was the power. It gave him the power to be able to stay awake. And it's very simple to stay awake. It's just that you sharpen your sensory skills. You sharpen your sensualization abilities. If you find yourself drifting off and you force yourself to look at the feathers on that eagle, to look at the span of the wings, sharpen, 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 and that increases higher frequencies of alpha so you don't slide down. And that's basically what we showed him. And as a result, he wrote during this meditation, who is happy, I had a very deep insight. I wasn't coming up with anything and started regressing into negative feedback. I asked, what do I have to offer? The answer was, I love unconditionally. I fully trust the answer. I don't know where to go from here, but I want the emotional and physical rewards of loving unconditionally. So his gamma synchrony was not really high. His scores weren't very high for gamma. You can see what he increased in was the awakened mind. And eyes opened, externalizing his alpha and his awakened mind with his eyes open, which very few people can do. He went from 54, the SAM had already given him that, to 70%, which is almost unheard of. Eyes closed from 57% awakened mind to 93%. From the animal meditation, from 62% to 91%. Phenomenal strides for him. And the SAM did it. I'll just do this one more because this is beautiful meditation. This woman is a part-time real estate agent. She does HemiSync and SAM 2 to 3 times a week. She's attended TMI programs since 2001. In set point, she has more than an awakened mind pattern, and it's going up to 100 hertz. It really is a gamma synchrony pattern, but it's got a diamond shape that says it's really moving toward an evolved mind, that evolved mind pattern. And her report was, at first I was in this area of all these angelic children, Lifeline, where you help stuck spirits. I was there, and also with children just dying. So many children were dying, a lot of them homeless in the Middle East and elsewhere. That was my job, just helping them, joining these loving children. Tears were pouring out. I saw Bob Monroe in his TMI office. He said, "This is just a start." He said, "Tell Scooter to thank the loyal employees." And of course she did, and of course they were happy to hear that. I visited living children out of body and sent them good energy. I asked, what was the message? Working with the cancer children is in the back of my mind. We went to hospitals. I would lift them and take them up. Now we had to parse a lot of SEMG out because she was crying, but by the time we got all the SEMG out, this was her pattern, and she's got gamma synchrony at 51%, and it was just gorgeous. Just real quick, this is a man, a non-meditator. You can see not as great a pattern, but in virtuality, he did get some 100 hertz gamma, and by the end of the week, he said, as the week progressed, my consciousness was expanding. He's coming back. This person, beautiful pattern, 100 hertz. She said, I can say, this is Lita, who went to the mother, and the mother said, "You are what I love about me, human beings." Huge gamma synchrony, scores and strides during the week. She managed that kundalini and got some terrific landmarks. This person has been to many, many TMI programs. Unfortunately, he has that descending 9 hertz alpha, so he clicks out and he doesn't get insights, but he got control of it. In virtuality, he expanded the amplitude of his alpha, which is every bit as good as bringing it up to 10.5 hertz. By the time we got to virtuality and presense, he was having very strong awakened mind scores. Some increases in his gamma, but mainly he was feeling like he was getting somewhere finally. This person loved the music, as many people loved the music, and commented on that. She danced and realized that she can dance her way through life. And she, on top of that, as she was dancing, SEMG free, moved from this huge gamma synchrony pattern, 68%, 63 for the whole session, to this segment, 67%. When she was dancing. Beautiful, beautiful patterns. Robin captured this. This is a knockout, just real quick. At 7:24 minutes, this person had basically an awakened mind pattern with this extra amplitude up here in beta, but still some rounding. At the point that she, who was the other non-meditator, was becoming her dog and healing her dog from the inside, and realizing the dog was lonely for her, and reassuring the dog that she was coming back, she blows into this gamma way up here at the top of the pattern. Robin caught her every time, and she even ends up with some theta down here. She was very happy with this entire workshop. I guarantee she's coming back. She's a retired family court judge. Better centered, and she realized that she has a strong reason to be happy, to make the world a better place. This one real quick. This was a man who had the same trouble with the descending alpha, clicking out and really frustrated about it. Almost Rumpelstiltskin kicking things, frustrated about it. And we showed him how to manage his alpha, and by the time we get to set point, he's dragged his alpha up to 10.5 hertz, and he's talking to a spiritual lady. I said I wanted to surrender. She said to put a sword in the heart chakra and surrender to the universe. I went through my normal symbols. I went to focus level 27. I floated and just let the meditation take itself over. I tried to just be, and he increased his gamma synchrony from 5% to 13%, and his eyes open awakened mind from 80 to 94%, which is phenomenal. I've never seen an eyes open awakened mind score that great before. This person processed spiritual healing with her spiritual committee. Now, by the end, she got uncomfortable in her chair, and you can see that her alpha amplitudes tremendously decreased, but she still had gains. An evolved mind, SAM, set point, huge scores, 88% for awakened mind, evolved mind, huge, vibe flow big, and in loving kindness, and hits some evolved mind. So everyone went somewhere. So due to time, I won't do this, but except to say that there was one person we could not compute her scores because she was so profoundly uncomfortable. And you can see what's happening with the gamma, even with the average scores, so we couldn't take it into account. So in this case, she had a lot of double stars on there, but unfortunately, we couldn't really count her statistical scores because they made no sense. So you'll love seeing these other ones, and the closing self-assessments there, the scores are there. You'll be able to see this was the other person who started out as the non-meditator. Brainwaves are kind of wrecked with in terms of asymmetry, but look where he went. By the end of the week, he was in a full-blown awakened mind pattern. So the findings and discoveries. That hemisync sound beats, this was for the mind mirror community, this was what we loved about it, stimulate gamma frequencies and states of awareness in which people access superconscious perspectives and profound, often life-changing insights. The brilliant brain and body landmark these higher states of consciousness and seem to prefer them, because they're going to go back. Once you hit a state like that, that brain wants to go back. Once it knows where it's been and that it can get there, it's going back. That the awakened mind, it's not time, not yet. Go back, bugs. That these patterns can extend up to 100 hertz, dead new to us. We had no idea that they were going to be the same patterns and go up to 100 hertz. And as a result, we have now got the software capability to start measuring them statistically. These studies prove that upper, mid, and lower gamma frequencies statistically refine the lower patterns. This is something Max Cade says, that a higher state of consciousness refines the lower state of consciousness. You're pulling in that energy, it's sharpening you in every way, and that's what happened in both these studies. It says that upper, mid, and lower gamma frequencies refine the evolved mind and the awakened mind patterns, and this is an important component, and in the process promote the brain and body coherence experienced as relaxation, well-being, and happiness, and give rise to compassion, creative insights, and evolution of consciousness. And then lastly, that these unprecedented, and thus, as Bob pointed out, historical studies, nothing that we know of has ever been done like this before, have added significant data on and understanding of gamma and its awareness to the international knowledge base on consciousness. And now we can go on to bugs and say, that is all until you see the extraordinary results of the OBE and RVE studies that we are halfway through and having an absolute blast with, right, Robin? So thank you for your time. I'm sorry that there's no questions, but we'll be around and about if you have questions, and then I'll send you the link to this show. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much.